Hey guys, welcome to another video. Today we're looking at another mini PC with an AMD Ryzen 5 APU. This one is from Beelink and it is the GTR. At the front we have a clear CMOS button, so this will reset the BIOS in case some of your settings don't make the machine boot anymore. And there are lots of options to play around with, and we will have a look at some of those to improve the performance. In the box we have the machine. We've got some instructions, a power supply with a US connector, so you need to use an adapter in Australia. It comes with a USB thumb drive that lets you reinstall the operating system, but I did a clean installation of Windows 10 myself. We're getting a short and a longer HDMI cable, and there's also bracket for a VESA mount, so you can mount this on the back of a monitor, and a few screws. Let's check out the dimensions. The machine is 17 centimeters wide, 12 centimeters deep, and I'm not sure why the machine is called GTR, and then on the side it says GR5. And the unit is 4 centimeters tall. At the front we have microphones. There's a power button here, clear CMOS, 2 USB 3. This goes for your headphones or headset. We've got a USB Type-C connector, which also carries video signal up to 4K 60 Hz, and at the top of the unit is a fingerprint reader. At the back here goes the power supply. We've got 2 gigabit Ethernet ports. These are provided by chips from Realtek, 2 HDMI 2.0 as well as DisplayPort. All 3 can drive a 4K 60 Hz panel, and 4 USB 3 ports. And here are the fan outlets, and we will later talk about fan noise. We also have Bluetooth 5 and the latest wireless 802.11ax, which is also called Wi-Fi 6. The machine has an AMD Ryzen 5 3550H processor, and unfortunately it's an older 12 nanometer Zen Plus APU, so you don't get the latest technology. We have 4 cores and 8 threads running at up to 3.7 gigahertz, and we're getting graphics, Radeon Vega 8 graphics with up to 1200 megahertz. The machine has 16 gigabytes of DDR4 memory configured in dual channel configuration, and the memory modules are from Micron, rated at 2666 megahertz. Unfortunately, the machine is configured to run them at only 1866, which makes no sense to me, but you can go into the BIOS and set the higher memory frequency, and we've done this for all the benchmarks and games shown in this video. Storage is interesting. We have a 512 gigabyte SSD. This one is a M.2 PCI Express NVMe, so we're getting very decent performance. There's also another M.2 slot inside the machine, but this one takes a SATA M.2 SSD. And as a nice surprise, there's also installed a 1 terabyte mechanical hard drive, which is nice. Lets you install a lot of software and store a lot of media. Plus, on one of the partitions is a backup of all the drivers. The machine came pre-installed with Windows 10 Professional, and after going online, I confirmed that it's fully activated. I can't help myself, but I always want to do a clean installation with the latest Windows 10 directly from Microsoft. That also worked fine, and Windows 10 was also fully activated with a digital license. Windows 10 did find all the drivers for all the devices, but I went to the AMD website and downloaded the latest AMD chipset drivers as well as the latest AMD graphics drivers, and you should then go into the power profile and set the AMD Ryzen balanced power profile. Now in the BIOS are some interesting options for the processor where we can configure how much power the APU can consume. By default, it's configured for 35 watt TDP, but I tried some of the other options and I did see a difference in boost or turbo clock speeds. At 35 watts, after 10 minutes, the machine runs at 3.3 gigahertz. At the 45 watt option, it runs at 3.5 gigahertz. So this is a stress test with all the cores. And at 54 watts, it runs with 3.6 gigahertz, which is very nice. Unfortunately, after I've done most of the testing, I ran into an issue with the night RAID benchmark. it will shut down the machine in the CPU test, and the only configuration that successfully completes this benchmark is the 35 watt option. However, we will later come back to these BIOS options again, because there is a little workaround to get the best performance out of the video portion of this APU. So I ran a few benchmarks. This is with the BIOS defaults, but with the memory speed set to 2666. In CPU set, we're getting 2255 for the multi-core and 426 for the single-core score. In Cinebench R15, 723, and in Cinebench R20, we're getting 1609. In Night Rate, we're getting 9274, and in Firestrike, 2465. Now, an observation with these mini PCs is when you run games is that the video clock speed does not stay at 1200 megahertz. So I played around with that. Even with the 54 watt power option in the BIOS, the graphics clock speed would still fluctuate a little bit, but not as much. So I was thinking, what if there's a way we could leave the CPU power at default and tell the BIOS to give more sustainable power to the video portion? But unfortunately, there's no option like that in the BIOS. But I found a little workaround. So what you can do is you can go into the BIOS and select the highest power profile, which is 54 watts. And then you also go into the Windows option and set the power option to power saver. This will result in the processor turboing up to 3.475 gigahertz under full load, and the GPU holding 1200 megahertz most of the time. And I also ran the Night Rate CPU test again, and it completed. So this could be a nice compromise of getting better CPU performance compared to what you're getting out of the box. But what's most important for games, a higher GPU clock speed. And now let's have a quick look at some games. We have Strange Brigade here running with medium details, and at 1080p it runs at just under 30 FPS. And I also tried setting the resolution to 720p, and it now runs at just under 60 FPS. So at low details you should get a fairly playable experience. Older games run a lot better on this machine. Here we have Dirt 3 running at 1080p with high details, and we're now getting over 60 FPS, which is very nice. So that means older games will run perfectly fine on this machine, but it's not a gaming machine. The latest and greatest games, you might be able to play them at low details, maybe even have to dial it down to 720p. But it is compatible with the latest APIs, so at least you will be able to run and try out all the latest games. The machine is really good with video acceleration. I tried 4K video files with all sorts of bandwidths and high refresh rates, and it plays them back flawlessly. Now let's take a listen to the fan noise. I found that the machine has 3 fan modes. One is really silent basically. Then there's a medium one which you can definitely hear. And then there's a loud one which is very audible. Even if you're outside the room, you can hear the fan go. And now it gets really interesting. So Beelink reached out to me to review this particular machine. However, a few weeks later, they contacted me again and told me, hey, guess what? We have already an upgraded version of this machine, and it will be cheaper than this one. So to me, that makes absolutely no sense. What's the point in sending a machine out to reviewers and then saying, well, there's actually a better machine out there that people can get for a lower price, making this machine kind of irrelevant, obsolete, whatever you want to call it. So they are selling this upgraded machine through a Indiegogo campaign, and it's called the Beelink GTR Pro, and it has 2 upgrades. One is called the same screen function, and the other one is called Game Hi-Fi Sound. I'm not quite sure what these features are about. I don't have that unit, so I can't test any of that. The pricing seems to be competitive. You're looking at $490. That is for the top model with 16 gigabytes of RAM, 512 gigabytes of SSD, and 1 terabyte storage. But still, this is a very confusing launch, having machines out there in the marketplace selling them, but then also on the side already taking pre-orders for the improved model for a lower price. So very confusing, not quite sure what's up with that. So guys, the Beelink GTR is quite an interesting mini PC. Not that mini, it's a little bit thinner than some of the other ones, but it's definitely a lot wider. Performance is decent. We now have dual channel memory, so performance in general is improved, and gaming performance is greatly improved. It has an unlocked BIOS, so it invites you to play around with the options to try to tweak extra performance out of this machine. And if something goes wrong, just press the clear CMOS button and everything defaults back to standard. Also, if you're looking to save power, you might be interested in choosing one of the lower TDP power profiles in the BIOS. So there's something for everyone to play around with. And if you configure a higher CPU option together with the power saver option in Windows 10, you will get still decent CPU performance, but improved graphics performance, which is what you want for most games. That's something I found with a lot of reviews out in the internet, that the video portion does not hold the maximum clock speed. I still think the manufacturers should work on that and get a BIOS out that in my opinion, that's my personal opinion, that maximizes the GPU performance. CPU performance, if it's 100 or 200 megahertz slower, I don't think that makes much of a difference in gaming, or at least have a BIOS option where you can choose to prioritize video performance or prioritize CPU performance. So depending on what you want to do with your machine, you at least have an option. Really nice storage option with 512 gigabyte SSD, which is fast, and also a 1 terabyte hard drive. And if you've got another M.2 SATA SSD lying around, you can also install that. Heaps of ports, that is nice to see, with up to 4 display connectors. So that might be of interest for anyone who wants to plug in a lot of monitors. Also 6 USB 3 ports. That is also very nice. The fan noise is definitely audible. It's not a quiet machine. My main desktop, even if I do video editing or heavy work, is a lot quieter than this machine when it runs at full speed. The launch is definitely confusing, with you being able to buy the upgraded version for a lower price by going through the Beelink Indiegogo campaign. As always, I will put the links down below. And in the end of the day, you need to look at what's out there in the market and make a decision for yourself. The machine itself, in terms of specifications, performance, upgradability, and all of that, is perfectly fine. I didn't encounter any technical issues, so that's good. It's a solid machine. In the end of the day, it comes down to the pricing and where you live, and you need to make up your own mind. And that's really it for this review. As always, I will have this machine lying around for a while. So if you have any questions, want me to test something, I can do that. And leave the ideas and thoughts in the comments. Also, what do you want to see in future videos? Let me know. I read every comment. I might not respond to every comment, but I'll definitely read every comment. And give it a like, share the video with your friends. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And I shall see you soon with another one.